Okay, everybody, we're going to start our double exposure practice. We're on the spring calendar. You clicked on the man photo and dragged that to your desktop. You clicked on the factory photo and dragged that to your desktop. Okay, remember if you had digital art last year with me and you already did this practice, then you are clicking on link number 2 and you're going to do this tutorial, substituting your own photos, a different portrait and a different photograph to layer in. All right, otherwise, if you've not done this practice assignment with me before, let's get started. All right, let's open up Photoshop and let's go ahead and open up a new document. File open. Oops, sorry, file new or create new. All right, let's go ahead and I'm just going to do standard 8x10. And I'm going to do landscape orientation. Make sure you're in inches. You could keep the resolution at 150 since it's a practice file, but if this is going to be something, as if you were ever doing an artwork, you would bump this up to 300 ppi. We'll stick with RGB color and white background. Let's click create. Okay, so your man and your factory are on the desktop. Let's open those up as their own documents. Do not drag and drop them onto the document. Remember, if you drag and drop a photo onto an open document, it becomes a picture clipping with reduced file size, reduced resolution. Let's not do that. Let's go to File, Open, and browse for the man. Let's go ahead and open it up. All right, so it's its own document now. And I'm simply going to grab the Move tool and drag and drop it now over onto my new document. Notice when I dragged and dropped it over, it's smaller, right, than my white new document. Reason being because the photograph itself was low resolution, where you're only using it as a practice. Our new document, our 8x10 document, is much higher resolution. All right, so you got the Move tool, you dragged and dropped it over. I don't really need this anymore. I'm just going to minimize it. All right, let's stay organized. I dragged and dropped the guy over, and now there's a new layer. I'm going to rename this Man Original. All right, and let's resize it. All right, I'm going to go to Control T for free transform and resize. Now, I really don't need his body. I just want his head, neck, and shoulders. So we're going to go ahead and drag it down and make the head larger. Now, ultimately, we're going to add the factory with smoke billowing out the head. So I am going to move him over to the right a little bit. And, you might go back and resize this later. Everything can be changed. We're just going to start with this. All right, once you like the position and the size and you've got a majority of his head, neck, and shoulders, don't distort, by the way. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click that check mark. All right, now from here, we could approach this two ways. You could technically cut him out of the background, either using your quick select or your pen tool. But we're going to go ahead and practice with masking using the quick select. So let's go over to your tool palette. I've got my tool palette in 2 rows so that it's easier to tell you where I'm looking at here. All right, we're going to go 2 tools down on the right. You might see the magic wand like me. Hold down on it and let's get the quick selection tool. All right, quick selection tool right now, in my sub menu, I'm on the plus sign, which means I'm going to be adding to my selection. You could also move to the minus sign there and subtract from a selection. All right, and I've got my cursor here, the pen tip, really small. All right, when you have it smaller, you have more control over what it's selecting. Now, technically, the quick select isn't all that precise, so I'm going to go slowly here and try to select the guy. And you're going to notice here that a lot of his hair is not in the selection. And if I try to select it, I'm going to get some of the black in the background. All right, that's okay for now. We're going to try to refine this in a moment. All right, so if you can't get all the hair and you got a little bit of black background, that's okay, like the teeniest bit of black background. Zooming in will also help your quick select be more precise. And by the way, if you got too much in your selection, go ahead and switch back to the minus sign or hold Alt on your keyboard, or Option, depending on which computer you're using. And you can subtract from the selection. You don't have to start over. All right, so you could add to the selection or you can subtract from the selection. I'm making my cursor even smaller, by the way. Left bracket is your shortcut to make your brush tip smaller. Right bracket makes your brush tip bigger. All right, scroll around, double check you didn't get black background around his face or his ears. Maybe you want to subtract from some of the selection. You can see here, originally I didn't grab that white collar, so now zooming in really helped me see that I need to get that white collar in there. All right, I'm going to zoom out. Once you feel pretty good about the selection, really, it should be a tight selection around almost all of him except for the hair. The hair might have a little bit of loose pieces or a little teeny bit of the black background. All right, once you've got your selection, let's make sure you go back to the quick select tool so that we have our submenu up, and we're going to click select and mask. Select and mask, and it's going to take us to this refine edge menu. All right, so now that I'm in select and mask, we're going to do a little bit of tidying up here. I'm going to put click on the radius. Let's go ahead and we're going to increase the radius a little bit to pick up some more of the hair. So I'm going to put my radius on 3 and see what that helps. All right, and then smoothing, I also want the edges to be more smooth so that they blend away. So I am going to bump up the smoothness 3 or 4. All right, if you wanted the edges to sort of blur away, which is, an option, you could feather the edges. I'm not going to do that though. All right, next I'm going to go to output settings right here. Let's drop down the arrow and output to We're going to drop this down where it says selection. We want it to be a new layer with a layer mask. All right, so we're going to click new layer with layer mask. All right, once you've got your radius done, your smoothing, if you want, I'm going to go back and put that smoothing in. All right, let's click OK. All right, we're out of the refine edge, and now we're back to your document. You should see in your layers palette that your original photo is now hidden. You got a new layer with your photo linked to a layer mask. All right, and you should see that it looks like he's been cut out, and there's now a white background. All right, so technically we have cut him out of the background in a non-destructive way. We have not actually erased the background. We have masked the background. So if you notice on the thumbnail here, the man is white, the background is black. When masking, white means reveal it, black means hide it. Okay, so if you want, go ahead and zoom in and check your edges. Does everything look okay? I mean, it looks still a little bit hazy on my edges. I did a lot of smoothing. If you had added any feathering, you might see the edges of his ears or his hair sort of blurring away. All right, now it's time to go get our factory photo. Let's go to File, Open, and browse for the factory photo on your desktop. Did I get the factory? There it is. Okay, so we've opened it as a new document. Let's get the Move tool and drag and drop it over to your new document with the man on it. All right, I'm going to minimize that. I don't need the original anymore. All right, pretty small. We're going to resize, and I'm going to go rename my layers to stay organized. Factory. All right, let's Control T to free transform and pull a corner. Do not distort your image. All right, our goal here is to play around with the silos lining up with some of the features of the face and the smoke billowing out the top of the head in somewhat realistic fashion. So if you want, go ahead and put the factory photo on lower opacity just so you can see through it to the man below. We might change this later, but let's reduce the opacity just so we can see where we're moving everything. All right, I'm going to play around with lining up the two silos that are next to each other with the bridge of his nose and having that smoke billow out the left side of the head. All right, so play around with moving it, resizing it. Okay, once you like where you've put it, you've resized it, you've lined it up, we might do some more adjusting later. I'm going to bring my opacity back up a little bit. All right, now it's time to clip. It's time to clip the factory into the layer below it. We're going to make a clipping mask. All right, so I'm on my factory layer. You could right-click and choose Create Clipping Mask right there in the Layers palette, or you could go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. Or if you like your keyboard shortcuts, Alt-Control-G. Okay, so now that I've got my clipping mask, notice that the factory picture is only showing up within the silhouette of the man. And on your layer for the factory, you should see that the thumbnail has been shifted right, and there's that little drop-down arrow telling you that this layer is clipped into the layer below it. If you ever want to get rid of a clipping mask, you can edit, undo. You can also go to Layer, Release Clipping Mask. And there, it's gone. All right, let's go back though. Layer, create clipping mask. Okay, now it's time to blend seamlessly. All right, so we're going to start by first colorizing our photo. All right, I'd like everybody to, when we do this next step, you're going to choose your own color just so yours looks different than everybody else's. All right, but let's go ahead and make a new layer. We're going to make a new layer below the man and the clipping mask, but above the original photo. So I'm going right here to the man original, and I'm going to click the new layer icon. We've got a blank new layer in there. All right, let's go choose a color that you want to add to the background. All right, so I've chosen my color. Let's get the paint bucket and just click it to fill the layer. All right, let's duplicate that layer you just made. All right, you can right click it and duplicate layer. I'm just going to call it color copy. All right, take that color copy layer, let's click it and drag it all the way to the top of your layers palette. So now it looks like you've just got a solid color. All right, now we're going to go to that color copy layer. We're going to go to the blending mode, the layer blending mode right here. It says normal, which means there's no interaction with the layer below it. Let's drop that down and let's choose color. All right, so we changed our layer blending mode to color. So right away, we've got some cohesiveness going on. We've got some unity in color now. All right, if you can play around right here too with opacity. Maybe you want a little bit of, if I reduce the opacity, see how some more of that black and white gray, technically the gray tones come back in? Or, bump it back up and it's more vivid. Okay, let's move over. We're going to now start adjusting and masking away part of the factory to reveal more of the guy, the man, and to break away from the head and bring back some of that smoke billowing out the head. So let's go to the factory layer. Right now, it also has a normal blending mode. Let's drop that down and choose lighten. You see what happened right away? See on normal, it's like my bright lights, my highlights are missing. And when I put it on lighten, those bright highlights are back. All right, so we're putting it on lighten to bring back that hard light on the side of his face, on each cheek, under the nose. Okay, time to bring back some of the guy. Let's go ahead and add a layer mask to the factory layer. All right, so make sure you're on the factory layer in the layers palette. Let's go down to the bottom of the layers palette and click on the add layer mask button. Looks like a gray square with a circle in the middle. All right, when we've got our layer mask on the factory layer, you should see that there is now a chain linked to a new white thumbnail, and the brackets are around the thumbnail. That's the mask. All right, remember what we said last time? White reveals, black hides. We want to hide some of the factory layer. So I'm going to go get black. Here it is, black as my foreground swatch. Let's get the paintbrush tool. And let's choose a soft brush that has soft feathered edges. Should be, one of your first brushes. And if you want to see your thumbnail and you want to see the name of your brush, click on the wheel and choose brush name so that you can see it. All right, so I'm getting the soft round. Okay, right now let's double check up top. You're in your brush tool, you've got the soft round, your mode is normal, and here's your opacity. Do you want the man to come back really fast? Keep your opacity at 100%. If you want to subtly bring it back, keep it lower. So notice I've got mine on 40, about 40%. I'm going to zoom into the eyes. Take a look. All right, so I'm painting with black with the brush tool, and I'm bringing back some of the eyes. See that? I'm bringing back the eyes and the eyebrows, and I'm doing this by hiding the factory, masking the factory on the factory layer. I'm using low opacity so it's more of a gentle, seamless blend. All right, same thing here. Like, I don't like how the factory is so straight on his nose. I'm going to blend away some of the edges while leaving some of them. Now, this is the part where you bring in some of your creativity here. Think about how things are going to blend around the face. Normally, you'd go pretty slow with this. All right, so I'm going fairly quickly. You can slow it down. You can also go back later and always mask away more. If you've decided you went too far and you want to bring something back, no problem. Switch to white in your tool palette, and then wherever you paint with white, you'll bring it back. See how I'm painting with white and bringing back that factory on his nose? All right, so I'm going to spend some time blending away some areas. I want the nose to come back. I think I'm going to get rid of some of the factory around the lip. The ear. All right. By the way, you can still play around with the placement of the factory. You can click on the factory thumbnail in the layers palette. So now the brackets are around the factory. See that in the layers palette? I'm going to get my move tool, and if your Photoshop doesn't jump to a new layer, okay. Nope, mine is jumping to the layer. All right, for some reason mine's glitching, but technically you should be able to click on the thumbnail right here, and you can move that picture around within the clipping mask. When you want to go back to painting away areas, make sure to put those brackets around the mask thumbnail again. Okay, you can go back and continue blending some of the factory into the face. Right now, though, let's break away from the structure of the head and bring back in some of that smoke that billows out. Let's go down to the man photo with the layer mask. Let's click on the layer mask of the man. Brackets are around the man now. And you see here that the background is all black on the thumbnail. We're going to bring back some of the smoke. So I'm going to switch to white in my tool palette. Let's go get your brush tool again, soft round, and I'm going to go ahead and keep my opacity a little bit lower. All right, now wherever we paint with white, we'll be bringing back the smoke. We'll be revealing it. Now notice I've got my brush fairly small and I'm on low opacity, just so I can have sort of a gradual effect here. And as we bring back the smoke, we're breaking the structure of the head, right? We're not having that hard outline around the head anymore. And I might even go in around the edges and reduce my opacity even more. I'm down to 15%, and I want those edges to come back really softly. I don't want it to look like it's this hard edge of clouds that appears. All right, so I'm just going to go back and forth between bringing up my opacity to bring in more clouds and then reducing my opacity to soften the edges and make them blend into the background more seamlessly, more gradually. All right, I got a little bit of a silo right there, and I don't like that. I'm going to switch to black, get rid of that silo. All right, switch back to white, bring back more of the clouds. Okay, notice that I ran out of photograph, and you can tell I got an edge right there. Okay, no problem. I don't want that edge there. Let's switch to black and mask out that edge. I'm going to reduce my opacity and softly blend it out. Our whole goal here is to make this look seamless and realistic. Get rid of edges, get rid of hard transitions. The other thing you could do if you got that floating edge, but you really want it to look like there's more going on, you could clone stamp the photo. You could clone stamp some more smoke in there, or I'm just going to make everything bigger. So I'm going to select the factory layer and the man layer at the same time. So I'm shift clicking on both of those. I'm going to control T for free transform, and I'm just going to make this all bigger. And I'm going to make it go more off the picture plane. Once again, I don't really need the body. I really just want to focus on the head, the shoulders, and the smokestack. I'm going to pull up my navigator so I can zoom out more. There we go. Okay, from here you could do a couple of things. You could add a red tint like our tutorial to give it a little bit more of a moody kind of look to it. You could add some noise to the background to give it kind of a film grain. You could add a paper texture over it to give it more of a Antonio Mora kind of feel, how he does the rock textures. All right, so let's play around with adding some things to really push this more than just a simple double exposure. Let's give it some more complexity. All right, so let's first off give it some film grain. Let's give it some noise. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer to the top. I'm just going to call this noise. All right, and let's fill it with a gray color. Getting the paint bucket and just filling it with a gray color. All right, and let's change the layer blending mode of that layer to overlay. Okay, notice it changed it a little bit already, right? It kind of made the edges around my cloud stand out, but it gave some interesting glow to the face. I'm not done yet, though. Let's go ahead and add the noise. Let's go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise. Okay, and you can take a look at your little preview here. The more you add, the more grainy it gets, or more subtle. All right, so I've added a little bit of noise for texture. All right, let's go ahead. Right now it's on uniform. I'm going to click Gaussian. And if you notice, you can see the difference here. It gets a little bit harder when you add the Gaussian versus the uniform. You know, play around. If you click on monochromatic, you'll see a slight difference in terms of the color. All right, so you pick. All right, I've got a little bit of my grain on there now. All right, it is kind of a hard grain and it's got a little bit of weird colors popping up, so I am going to actually blend it a little bit. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. A Gaussian blur means every pixel has a feathered edge. All right, so here you can see all those pixels that were hard edged are now blurry. If you go too far, they'll be gone altogether. So just a really subtle blur, just so they don't look like pixels, the noise. I want it to look like film grain and not pixels. All right, just a teeny bit of a Gaussian blur on there. All right, the other thing you could do if you still think your noise is too much, you could reduce the opacity of your noise layer. Okay, next, I think let's just, for the sake of looking at some new complex things, let's go get a paper texture or some other texture, and let's overlay that as well. So let's head over to Google, and you could look for paper texture, rock texture. I don't know, I'm going to see what stone texture looks like. Or we could just say stone paper. Let's see. Nah, let's go to stone texture. Okay, I like this one right here. And it's unsplash.com. Let's see if it's working for us today. Nope. All right, for some reason we can't access this at school. So it's a practice. I'm just going to go ahead and grab the image off the internet because it's a practice, but keep in mind this is going to be a low quality image. It is from unsplash.com, so I'm assuming that we've got Creative Commons license, so that's good. All right, so I've got my stone texture. I'm going to go ahead and open that up now as a new file. Let's go to File, Open, and I'm going to browse for that texture. All right, here you can see it is pretty small. I'm going to go ahead and get my Move tool and drag and drop that on top. Yep, super small. Let's see how it looks when I make it bigger. All right, Control T to free transform. All right, now you could play around with this. Maybe I only want the stone texture on the face. Maybe I only want the stone texture in the background. All right, let's see about it just on the face. All right, if I'm going to put it on just the face, let's see if I can clip it below. There we go. All right, now notice I dragged that stone layer below the factory but above the man, and notice it automatically got a clipping mask because there was a clipping mask for the layer above it. That's good, I wanted that, all right? But now the stone texture is showing too much, blocking everything out. Let's go ahead, I'm gonna change that layer blending mode again. All right, and let's play around. Usually overlay would be a good idea, but we could also do soft light. All right, and I'm going to reduce that opacity. I want the factory to show, but I just also wanted some of that stone texture on the guy. All right, you'll notice that for my Photoshop, for some reason, it's a little glitchy. It keeps bouncing between layers that I'm not really on. I'm going to try to solve that problem by locking everything I'm not on. So I'm going to lock my noise layer by clicking the lock symbol. I'm going to lock my color copy. I'm going to lock the factory. So I'm going to lock every layer except the stone layer, and hopefully Photoshop will stop jumping to layers I don't want it to be on. Okay, so from here we've done our masking on the guy, we've done masking on the factory, we've added layer blending modes, we've revealed some more of the smoke gradually, we've added a background with color and noise and overlaid that to create the color on the man, and I've also added that stone texture to the face. Okay, want to go an extra step? I'm going to give this a vignette. All right, to give this a vignette, I am going to make a new layer at the top. I'm going to click on the add a new layer adjustment, and I'm going to choose brightness contrast. Actually, I forgot a step. First off, I am going to go get the elliptical marquee. I'm going to drag an ellipse around the document. By the way, a vignette is when you darken the corners or lighten the corners. Okay, and by the way, let's step back. So you want to do this with me? You're going to go to the elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to feather the ellipse, by the way. I want the selection to have soft edge. And depending on how your pixels per inch, your resolution, you're going to need to increase or decrease your feather. So this is kind of an experiment. My document was only 150 ppi, so I think I might just feather it 60 pixels. But if your document is 300 ppi, you might need to go over 100 pixel feather. All right, so I feathered the pixel. Now I'm going to drag my ellipse. Right now that ellipse is selecting the interior of the document. I want it to select the corners. Let's flip it. I'm going to go to select inverse to flip that selection. All right, so now you see that the corners are selected. Okay, now I'm going to click on the half black, half white circle, which is the add adjustment layer, and I'm going to choose brightness contrast. It's going to pop up our brightness contrast properties panel. And to darken the corners, I'm going to reduce the brightness. Can you see it? Can you see the corners darkening? All right, if I put them back up, see it, normal and darkening. All right, and once again, the reason why they are softly blending into the interior of the document is because I feathered my elliptical marquee selection before I drew the selection. And if you have too much of a hard edge around your vignette, you can always undo it, go back and increase the feathered pixels on your elliptical marquee. All right, I'm good here. At this point, I would save this. First off, I'm going to save it as a Photoshop document so that I have a copy. Okay, so I've got a Photoshop document copy. It's got all my layers in case I want to go back and edit. Now it's time to flatten it and save it as a JPEG so that I can turn it in. Let's go to File, Save As. Oops, I forgot. Sorry, let's flatten it first. Let's go to Layer, Flatten Image. Okay, flattening it, of course, reduces the file size and flattens all your layers so that you can't edit anymore. So make sure you saved your Photoshop document with the layers first. All right, do I want to discard hidden layers? Yes, okay. All right, so now it's flattened. It's all one layer. It's a reduced file size. Now let's save it as a JPEG. File, Save As. Let's drop down the format and choose JPEG. And save. All right, I'm going to bump up my quality a little bit. Let's go to 9 or 10. Okay, so now I've got my Photoshop document copy and my JPEG copy.